When we look around, we see a world in constant motion. Rivers flow, seasons change, and objects break. But some of the earliest Greek philosophers argued that all of this, every movement you make, every second that passes, is a complete hallucination. This idea comes from Parmenides and the Eleatic school of thought. They proposed a strict logical rule: what is not simply cannot exist. To them, the very concept of nothingness, or empty space, is a logical contradiction. This represents their view of the universe, a single, dense, continuous block of reality. If there is no empty space, there is nowhere for anything to move into. You can't divide a solid block with no gaps. Therefore, any physical change you think you see is mathematically impossible. According to this strict Eleatic logic, humanity is permanently locked inside a stagnant, frozen universe, and our daily experience is nothing more than a trick of the mind. To break this intellectual gridlock, two philosophers named Leucippus and Democritus proposed a radical workaround. They introduced the concept of the Kenon, or the void. They argued that what is not, actual physical empty space, does in fact exist. Introducing empty space fractures the universe. That dense frozen block of reality is suddenly allowed to break apart into infinite microscopic fragments, each separated by a gap of nothingness. They called these uncuttable units atoms. Because these atoms are the absolute base layer of reality, they cannot be broken down any further. They are eternal and indestructible. They possess no temperature, they produce no sound, and they have no color. They are entirely blank, featureless geometry. By daring to give nothingness a physical presence, Leucippus and Democritus solved a paradox. The void provided the room needed for these atoms to shift and rearrange, finally allowing motion, multiplicity, and time to exist mathematically. This creates a new problem. If the universe is made entirely of invisible, flavorless dots, how do we get the rich textures of human faces or the smooth surface of carved stone? Democritus answered this with the principle of convention. He argued that qualities like sweetness, heat, and color don't physically exist in the objects themselves. They are human interpretations, mental reactions to different shapes of atoms hitting our sensory organs. The objects we can touch and see are built through mechanical combination. Atoms come in infinite geometric variations. Some have tiny hooks, others have barbs or irregular edges. When they collide in the void, these shapes entangle, forming a temporary lock that creates macroscopic structures. This means that all decay and aging is a mechanical failure. Over centuries of constant bombardment from the elements, those microscopic hooks slowly lose their grip, and the physical bonds holding the object together eventually give way. The trees, the mountains, and even our own bodies are temporary clusters of blind geometry. They possess no inherent meaning, and eventually the atoms will detach and scatter back into the void. If the physical world is just a series of atomic collisions, we have to look at the invisible forces driving those impacts. For Democritus, this meant accepting the absolute law of necessity. Necessity removes any grand narrative from the cosmos. There is no divine architect designing the stars, no guiding intelligence, and no ultimate purpose directing creation toward a final goal. The system operates on strict determinism. Every single event, every human decision, and every falling leaf is the unavoidable result of a prior microscopic collision. Cause and effect stretch backward into infinity, with each impact mechanically dictating the next. Ancient atomism describes a universe that is a churning, unthinking machine of dead matter. In this model, human actions are entirely predetermined by the geometry of invisible parts. There is a mechanical flaw in this pure determinism. If atoms are falling eternally through an infinite void, pulled strictly by gravity, they would fall in perfectly straight, parallel lines. If they only ever fall parallel to one another, they can never intersect. Without a collision, nothing can ever entangle. The universe would remain an empty, endless rain of isolated dust. Centuries later, the philosophers Epicurus and Lucretius identified this problem and introduced a radical amendment to the theory. They called it the Clinamen, or the swerve. The swerve is an uncaused, unpredictable shift in trajectory. At completely random intervals, a single atom twitches just a fraction of a degree off its parallel path. That tiny deviation causes a collision, which causes another, setting off a chaotic chain reaction. The deterministic grid is broken. It is pure, random chance, not strict destiny or the will of the gods, that provides the spark to ignite the formation of the cosmos. That cascading chain reaction of the swerve eventually compounded. The collisions gathered into massive cosmic whirls, slowly building the stars, the earth, and eventually the human mind. Lucretius presented this not as a bleak reality, but as a profound philosophical relief. If we are merely temporary, accidental clusters of drifting atoms, then there are no angry gods monitoring our behavior, and no divine retribution waiting for us after death. Staring into the cold, purposeless mechanics of the void was intentionally designed to act as an exposure therapy. It strips away the mythologies that cause human anxiety. True tranquility, what the Greeks called ataraxia, is found by accepting the physical reality of the universe. We don't need to seek out a hidden divine purpose to find peace. We can embrace our brief existence as a beautiful, random accident of geometry and chance.